Welcome back to How Good Was It? This is the podcast where we take the movies from our past, bring them back to the modern times, and seeing if they still hold up. The second half of this episode will feature something we've been doing all for the past 2 3 weeks. We've had guests,
Yeah.
and they're usually guests that are in our inner circle, friends, family, and such. And but this time we'll be honored with two guests from the Sunnydale Diaries, right? Am I
Yep.
correct? Just want to
Yep.
make sure.
Yeah. A
Which is,
Buffy podcast.
yes, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast. If you are into vampires, if you're into Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you must listen to this podcast. It's actually a lot of fun. I'm already like 3 or 4 episodes deep. Melanie and Sean from this podcast will be guest hosts on the second half to this episode, which will be a retro review of what is it? You guys say it because I already forgot.
Once Bitten. The 80s classic vampire movie.
Mark Kendall's a regular guy.
Get me out of here!
With normal problems.
I want to, but I want it to be special.
But Mark's just discovered
Hello, tall, dark, and handsome.
that his one-night stand
I haven't had anything this pure since the Vienna Boys Choir hit town.
has been around for centuries.
I'm 390 years old.
400 if you're a day.
Nothing is sacred in a tasty comedy
Can I have one of those uncooked ones?
you can sink your teeth into.
How was it?
Delicious.
Once bitten.
Dana's already shaking his head. I love it.
I think we're all shaking our head on this choice. This is
little
a
bit.
Sunnydale Diary choice.
I haven't watched this movie in ages, since the 80s. I remember very little. But strangely enough, even Scott doesn't remember much about this movie.
I think it's starting to come back to me a little more the more they think about this movie. But yeah, I think we touched on it before the podcast. We all know this is the first movie for Jim Carrey, and it was many years before Ace Ventura. I'm pretty sure this is a mid 80s movie. I want to say this is 84, 85, 86. So this is way before Jim Carrey in the 90s when he took off, before Ace Ventura, before Living Color, I believe. I don't think he was even on Living Color yet. I think Lauren Hutton is in this movie too.
Oh,
The model / actress with the famous gap in her teeth.
you know
And
what? I believe she's the one that is trying
she's
to
a
turn him
vampire.
into a vampire.
Yeah, she's
you're
the
right.
vampire that he is lusting after.
Dana, did you ever see? You have watched this movie, I think you said. No? No.
Negative.
Wow.
So the only reason I know about this movie is because I did one of those really awesome like internet deep dives because I was just like, when did Jim Carrey start popping? I was like, the 90s, like, it's like, I'm sure his first movie was X or blah, or his first work was blah. Oh, like he had like a whole career in the 80s, and I had no clue. I thought he just did stand-up and that was it. Like I thought it was like stand-up, found a way to do a Living Color, and then like his career blossomed. But no, I had no idea he had this whole world. So that's why I knew about the movie, never seen it, and I think I may know a couple of parodies from this movie, but never seen this movie at all. Like zero.
Okay.
Like
So you're really gonna hate it. Yeah.
I
I would think this movie is dated. I remember thinking, probably enjoying this movie as a kid. Like I said, this is a kind of early 80s, so maybe I was 12, 13, and I remember thinking it was fine. There's no Back to the Future. Probably a movie came out about the same time.
Jesus.
What I think is going to be the case for me is I remember as a kid thinking Lauren Hutton was not attractive. I had a big problem with her gap in her teeth. And I probably thought Jim Carrey was funny. And I think if I rewatch it now, I'll probably think the reverse. I'll think Jim Carrey is not funny and Lauren Hutton's hot.
I do remember as a kid, I watched this movie a lot on cable. It's one of those movies that were just like they would play throughout the day in cable. It was cable TV had like they would have their feature films that they would show at peak hours, right? Like 8 9 o'clock in the evening when everyone's home and they're gonna sit down and watch a movie. But the rest of the time, the other what 20 hours or so of programming was just shit that they would just have on a
Filler.
constant loop, a lot of filler. And this was one of those movies.
For sure.
It's
This was
just-
like a mid-afternoon, 2, 3
Yeah.
o'clock movie on HBO. Yeah, you just got home from school, you see the second half of this, and then you watch People's Court.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
It's something like that.
This shit would be playing before you go into school.
Yeah,
And then when you got home and it'd still be playing.
Yeah. What this movie in my mind feels like, we recently attempted to do the movie Lost Boys, and I remember as a kid, thinking it was a really cool movie, and like all the teenagers were cool, and I wanted to be like that. Thinking about it back at this movie, I'm like, no, this was one of the movies I didn't like. Oh, I think these people are cool. It was not. This, to my mind, is not a cool movie.
I think a lot of this is about virgins, and that's about it. Like, I think that's the main part of this, and that's about
I'm
it.
gonna
Like,
go out on a limb. I'm not gonna go out on a limb. I'm almost positive this movie is 100% a comedy and no horror aspect to it. I mean, there's vampire stuff to it, but like a lot of these movies where they try to mix horror with comedy, I think this is almost just a straight up comedy. I don't think there's a scary at all to this. This is not a movie I've ever thought to go back and revisit. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, I hope
it's going to be shit. You guys know.
Hello, Melanie. I'm gonna start saying hello with you.
Hello.
Melanie is one of the hosts of the Sunnydale Diaries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Sunnydale.
I'm glad I'm not effing up your podcast name. Her co-host in crime could not join us today, but big shout out to Sean. I hope you're feeling better. Or maybe he just was like, I'm not doing this twice.
This movie did
Still writing on the wall.
He has learned his lesson, and he has learned it well.
Yeah,
Dana
for
had
sure.
never watched this film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but I will get to you, Dana. I have to go to our guest first. Now, you had seen this film before, obviously.
This is one of those movies that was on HBO a lot.
Yes.
When it was first out. And yes, so I'm sure I watched it many times on HBO, but it's been a long time since I've seen it. I think as younger me, I probably enjoyed it because it's very, lighthearted and silly. As a grown-up, nah.
Well, we'll definitely hit that part. How about like familiarity with like Lauren Hutton, or like what was the name of the other chick? Yeah, like
Lauren Hutton and the other girl I don't know, but
she's kind of a no name. Yeah,
Cleavon Little for sure.
I had totally never, even when watching this, I didn't realize I was Cleavon Little until I saw the credits, and I'm like, what the hell? Cleavon Little lost so much weight; it looks so different.
Yeah.
I did not recognize him in the least. But Dina, do you know who Cleavon Little is?
No fucking clue.
Wow.
that whole dance sequence, that I knew all the words to that song, the Hands Off song.
You know what?
I hope both of these songs have Grammys. I think well, Scott, you're the facts and figure guys.
I won't look. I'm pretty sure I'll say no.
Once that dance sequence kicked in, though, all the memories came flooding in.
Right,
Melanie, man, it was like, and I started like reciting the lyrics. I was like, I can't believe I still know this. Scott, go in with your facts and figures, man. I need to know about this movie.
Oh yeah, there's facts and figures for this one. All right, so this movie did come out in 1985. Like I said, it was 8 years before, I believe Ace Ventura came out in 93. Jim Carrey started In Living Color in 1990. So he did quite a few small roles in movies around this time. Earth Girls Are Easy, the Deadpool movie, the original Deadpool movie, the Dirty Harry Deadpool movie. He played the Axl Rose character that gets murdered at the beginning.
Are you serious? That was him?
This movie was made for $3.2 million. Grossed a whopping $10 million. So,
that budget must have gone to renting out the mansion, and that's it. Where else they could have spent money on this movie?
The ice cream truck.
Thank you. Please continue, Scott.
Yeah, well, and the director for this film is a guy named Howard Storm, and he really is pretty much a television director. He did direct Bananas and Valentine's Day for some reason. And then other than that, he's all like injures to the Family Matters, things like that. He directed everything, so he wasn't really a big commercial director, and I think it kind of shows in this movie. It is kind of filmed like a sitcom in a way.
I expected there to be a little bit more, not blood or violence, obviously, but at least more vampire doings, right? Seeing them seeing them get into some victims or whatever. But there was nothing like that. As Melanie mentioned before, it is very lighthearted. It's almost like, and as Scott said, the director is known for sitcoms. It shows because this kind of had the feel and the pacing of a sitcom in many ways.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey plays a young teenager in high school. Now, of course, you know, one of the tropes that we always rag on in 80s films is how no one looked their age.
Yeah. Do you guys want to take a guess at ages? I do know the ages of.
Please.
Let's say Jim Carrey, his two best friends, his girlfriend, and Lauren Hutton.
Let's start with Jim Carrey. What do you guys think as far as age?
Mid-20s.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I'll go the low end then. I'll go 23.
Dana nailed it. He was 23, and he is the youngest of this group that we have just named.
Yeah, no shit, Scott, man. Everybody else looked like they were 35 to 40.
How about his girlfriend? How old do you think the girlfriend was?
The girlfriend, now look, beautiful young woman.
Yeah,
I remember seeing her in several other movies. Not much though. She looked older than Jim Carrey. I mean, she must have been pushing around 30-ish.
She's 28.
Okay.
Wow.
28.
Okay.
How about his two best friends? Now, this one kind of got
the blonde. Yeah. No, I'm sure one has
the-
to be 31 and one has to be like 35. I wouldn't be like, I almost won't take no for an answer.
I think you almost got it exactly. I think it's 31 and 33.
Wow.
So yeah, they were quite old. And then Lauren Hutton. How about Lauren Hutton? How old do you
she
think
had to
Lauren
be
was?
like, I'm gonna say at least 40.
I believe she was 41.
Jim Carrey plays a young teenager in high school named Mark, and his main thing is trying to get laid, basically, as in all these other teenage hornbag movies from the 80s, which we grew up and which we love fondly. There was that one scene in the beginning where
The
they're
makeout area.
the makeout area, and it was a little bit more than the makeout area, man.
Yeah, the innuendo is she doesn't want to have sex, and then he gets out. Everyone in the car around him is sex. A lot of guys' asses in the air.
Yeah.
To drive it home, they're right by an oil pump pumping into the ground. I'm like, all right. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's where the budget went to. The hydraulics in this movie. There's hydraulics throughout.
Yeah.
How good was it?
I think we need to get Melanie get the first crack at this.
How good was it?
Yes.
0 good.
Oh, damn.
Nothing redeemable in this movie.
0 good.
You need crack to actually watch this movie.
0 good. Yeah.
There's not one thing in this movie, Melanie.
You know, like we said, the catchy song, maybe, you know, getting to see Jim Carrey at the beginning of his career was kind of fun. All right, so I'll give it one.
It's a 1.
A 1
How
good.
good was it? How good was it? It was 1.
That's what I'm gonna give it.
1 out of 1 of 1.
Yeah.
Meh.